Okay, perfect. So let's get started. So this is the session which we are going to do is module 5, and we are into the 5th session. Okay, so today we're going to deep dive into the module which deals with RPA business analyst, the roles, the skills, and the challenges. So initially what we have done was we started this session or the course with generic ideas of how a business analyst role is all about. What are the capabilities that you need? How do you work in an agile methodology with as an business analyst? So we had all those discussions, right? And then now gradually we are edging towards the RPA concepts, right? In the previous session we spoke about the basics of RPA, and a little bit into the opportunity assessment and things like that, right? So this session is going to be more into RPA business analyst roles, skills, and challenges that are generally being faced, and we would try to understand that what sort of role do we need to be in for a proper RPA business analyst, skills that we need to possess particularly, and then certain challenges that also is there, which we need to overcome. Okay, so now, as we have already understood what is a business analyst, what are the roles of business analyst. So right now, if we try to understand the role of an RPA business analyst, honestly, there's not much more difference in terms of the definition. Okay, so RPA business analyst is also the specific job role where you are accountable to bridge the gap between the stakeholders or your clients requesting a solution and between your delivery teams or your tech teams, right? So if you see the diagram at the bottom, on the left hand side, let's say we have the business or the process owner, and on the right hand side we have the technology team, right? So RPA business analyst would act as a bridge in order to communicate certain things, and we will see what are all those in the upcoming slides. So and what would be your basic roles and responsibility and your skill set and everything. Now let's say the business process owner would initially start up a project, and they would come to you or your company or your team stating that I have a business problem or a requirement that needs to be solved, or I'm expecting to have an RPA bot created for one of my business problem area, right? So with that, what happens is we initiate or kickstart a project, correct? And then we get into the discussion with the client to understand what is the business requirement or what is the pain problem. All right. So in that case, you as a business analyst, or rather as an RPA business analyst, is accountable to join the conversations with the client to get the requirements and the problem area. So what you do as a core key responsibility is to first see that where is the exact business requirement for this project. What are the problems that the client is trying to solve? So you, let's say in a conversation, you discuss, you make notes, you understand what the problem statement is, what are the applications involved, on a high level. We'll deep dive over it. Now you would then come back to your technology team. Sometimes what happens is different organization works in different models. So I have seen companies where the moment there is a project that gets initiated, they only involve the business analysts or the program managers to go and discuss and understand the problem with the client. They would eventually come back. Okay, these program managers or the RPA business analyst would then come back and discuss the problem statement or the business requirements with the technologies team to understand the technical feasibility of that solution or of that problem rather, you know and then get a high level idea that how much is the feasibility, how much duration it would take, what sort of a complexity this project is all about. All this discussion happens, and then the program manager or the BA goes back to the client and they share their researched outcome, correct? So this is the one way how one certain companies operate. Okay, so in that, RPA business analyst becomes the sole bridge between the stakeholder and the solutioning team. right? Then you are also accountable to validate the solution, what the solution does. Then, and that's the later point of. So let's say, you have the business owners where after your solution is designed, client will do the testing, right? So there also, you as a business analyst become a bridge to assist both the client or the business process owner to validate the solution and see if the solution is exactly doing what it is intended to do. Okay, and then come back to the technology team to provide them with sort of any assistance or confirmation. Now let's say your business process owner has reported a bug or any sort of an issue with respect to the tool, right? So what is going to happen, or with respect to the bot, what is going to happen is it's going to be getting reported or logged. Now the business analyst is the person who would go back and see all the backlogs, or rather I'll not say backlogs, I'll say that the reported issue, come back to the technology team and report that, hey, you know what, this is what the client has submitted as an error, can you guys go ahead and check it? So technology team would eventually see it, fix it, and resubmit or republish the new code, right? So that's one way. Other way is, I have seen certain companies where they agree to involve the technical or the technology team, right at the beginning, along with the business teams. Now why, what is the reason for that? So they understand, or they believe, that if the technology teams are associated right from the initial discussion, you might be avoiding that additional time frame or bandwidth which the business analyst will take to go back and explain the project, explain the area, or the client is explaining all the exceptions. So that's an additional time frame. Correct? If the technology teams are available already at the beginning of my discussion, they are also able to understand that what the problem is all about, and they can start contributing from then and there. But still, in that case also, business analyst would be accountable to, understand the requirement, make the documentations, converse with the technology team about the feasibility. The role is same, but just that the tech teams are directly involved in certain cases. Yeah. Okay, so this is what the expectation of the role for an RPA business analyst is all about. Now, over the period of time, there has been an evolution in the RPA business skills, BA skills that are, generally expected. Okay, so first of all, a vision is very, very important. That means whenever you are working for any specific organization or client, it is expected, or it is, encourage that you have a specific goal or a vision. So, and how it will happen, it can be your individual, or it can be the entire COE. So the RPA COE should set certain goals and visions and targets, that why this RPA COE has been set up, what is the goal that you guys are going to achieve over the next 1 year. you know are you going to give the company a lot of FT benefit in terms of automation, headcount benefit? Are you going to digitize most of the processes? Are you going to implement 100 plus robots in 1 year? That's the vision, right? That's an organizational vision. And you also should have an individual vision, like, okay, I want to be a part of at least 4 to 5 projects in next 6 months, where I can explore and contribute and upskill myself and get hands-on understanding of how to drive an RPA project end to end. Let it be as an RPA business analyst, or let it be as an RPA program manager. That could be your vision, right? To enrich or upskill your expertise, correct, in different methods. And you might be expecting that, okay, I would be interested to work in 3 different domains by next 1 year. So I would plan to take up projects from medical or healthcare. I would be planning to taking up projects in healthcare or insurance, and let's say manufacturing, so that you get the domain expertise as well, right? So if you see the attribute, so first of all, we are talking about something called as vision, right? And that's my step number one. After we set the vision, I also should have some sort of an analytical skill, and that's something I as an individual should possess. Okay, now what do you mean by analytical skill? Now, 7 or 8 top analytical skills that are very high in demand in the market right now. Or any interviewer who is trying to assess you or take your interview would be highly interested to see where do you stand in this behavioral aspect. What are your analytical skills? What are your how do you present yourself? So first of all, as a business analyst, you should have pretty much competent verbal communication. Your communication needs to be top notch, because this communication skill which I have highlighted separately is because I want to emphasize this communication skill as an individual attribute, though it is a subset of the analytical skills. But I wanted to highlight it so that we understand and emphasize ourselves on how effective and competent verbal communicator we need to be, because you are acting as a bridge, correct? So your client is giving you certain requirements and certain understanding of the problem. Now you should be having an effective communicative skill to probe and have a discussion with the client, confer about the idea, get as much as information as possible so that it helps you set up the use case properly and come back and discuss the same with your technical team, right? So under analytical skill, one of the competent skill would be your communication. Next is you need to be a good listener. So if I can make it as point one, okay, what would be my point two? You need to be a good listener. Unless and until you listen well, you cannot understand the problem, or you cannot be in a position to know that what exactly is being discussed. So effective listening is very important for being an effective communicator. So you need to listen to what your clients are explaining. What is the problem that they're trying to put forth in front of you, correct? So if you have a good analytical skill and good communication skill, you will question back based on what you have listened. You would reconfirm the issue. You would be able to visualize that, okay, this is the problem and this is how I think this problem can be solved. That visualization has to come through your analytical skill, right? Next, third is, they always say it, you should have the ability to understand, very understand objectives, or delegated objectives rather. Now what is objective? So whenever you get into a discussion, there's an objective, there's a problem area, there's an issue, there's an objective which is being discussed. So you should have an ability to understand the motto, right, behind a specific project or a use case, right? Then you should be able to manage meetings with your stakeholders in a proper manner. That is also an analytical skill. Okay. The fifth one, which is very important, is time management. So let's say you are working in 3 different projects as a business analyst, and all of them have 3 different stakeholders, right? So you are dealing with 3 different stakeholders, 3 different problems. So you need to manage your time, that how much time should I spend in which project based on the complexity or the urgency or the prioritization that has been done, and arrange your timing accordingly, that okay, I'm going to put out of my 8 hours of working, 3 hours is going to go into this because that's my priority. Well, 2 hours I'm going to spend here and 2 hours I'm going to spend here. So effective time management is very, very important. And lastly, last but not the least, you need to be very good in documentation. Okay, documentation, and what we call it as writing reports, because as a business analyst, it is your sole responsibility to publish reports to your stakeholders, to your higher authorities, to your management, to your managers, right? And writing reports and documentation. And what is the documentation? Let's say you have created a requirements document based on what the client has explained. So you should know how to create an effective requirements document, correct? So these are certain attributes that you should possess as a part of the current modern business analyst, that would fit not only into RPA, though you're focusing here, but these attributes would eventually help you to maneuver across different business analyst roles in the market. All right. And the next one, which is very, very important, is business and industry knowledge. Now, what do I mean by that? Now, business or industry knowledge is nothing but the domain knowledge or the business knowledge. How? Let's say, when generally when I interact with the people, who complete our courses and they're being placed into the market for job, we try to explain them, or they, are being asked by the interviewer that, can you tell me what are the clients you have worked on and what sort of projects you have dealt with? What is the purpose of this question? The purpose of this question is they want to know that what are all the business areas that you have worked on, and what are the industries that you have worked on. What is the industry for me? Medical or healthcare could be an industry for me. Second, insurances could be an industry for me. Third, manufacturing could be an industry for me. Fourth, e-commerce can be an industry for me. Fifth, in what else, transportation can be an industry expertise for me. Okay. So there are different, there are sixth, banking, very very important. Banking can be an industry exposure for me. Correct. So when they ask you about industry knowledge, they want to understand that what expertise do you possess from, and you belong to which of the industry. Now let's say you have said, I have worked for Citibank for 2 years. Now Citibank definitely falls as a banking client, so that means they would understand that the industry you belong to is banking, because you are currently working with Citibank, or let's say you're working with Wells Fargo, right? Now when I say that, okay, you know what, I have been working with XYZ healthcare, that means I'm associated, or I belong to the industry or the business that deals with healthcare, right? Or let's say I belong to any of the insurance company, right? So that's how your business and industry knowledge comes into picture. And I have recently seen that interviewers are very keen to know that, what sort of projects you have worked on, different expertise or different industry that you show as a part of your experience, and based on that you are being interviewed. So you need to leverage, your business and industry knowledge based on, these different segments. And that's very very, is in a great demand in the market right now. Yeah. Okay. So now let's understand what to do as an RPA business analyst, right? So all the, skills that we have discussed, based on this, the first step that you need to be working, or you would be working rather, as a business analyst, is create smart documents with clear and concise information as per the tool standards. So every company has their own documentation standard. Okay. Some companies believe to go into very lengthy discussions, sorry, a documentation where you need to mention each and every point, right from day one, meeting one, session one with your client, till the project, till you develop and, deliver the project. They want clear and concise information. What is the date on which you have started the discussion? What was the outcome of the first meeting? When was the requirements shared? What was the requirement that, you went back to clarify? What was the date? How much deadline time did you do to research and when go back to the client with their solution approach? What is your development strategy? Everything needs to be documented, and we will learn more about these documents in our upcoming sessions. Second is, be aware about the technology, tools and solutions that best fits your project. Now what do I mean? Now let's say, nowadays RPA is not only considered as a generic automation. Okay. It has now got integration with different applications and platforms and technology stack. Now let's say there is a project where the client is saying, I need to pull 10K plus records or data from a database. Okay. From a database which is there, and that database is nothing but MySQL. Now if you don't know what the heck is a MySQL, then you will be like landing from the moon. Correct. So it is very important that you also have a little bit of an awareness and a very high level knowledge about certain technologies, tools and solutions that might be utilized as a part of your project. Okay. So now let's say they say that, okay, my data is there. Every day I need to pull 10K plus records. My database is there in MySQL, which is what is MySQL? MySQL is actually, it's a database tool. It is a database software. So MySQL gives you the leveraged platform to create your databases in cloud, or let's say in any local repository. That's what is MySQL. So you should know about all these technology stacks. Let's say in any of the another project you understood that, okay, you need to log into an website which is developed in Java, okay, and the technology that you need to use is REST API. Now you should be aware, at least at a very high level, that what is REST API, correct? If you don't know such technology stacks and what does it do, it is very difficult for you to understand that how this solution is going to work, because you might not be developing the solution as a business analyst, but you should know in and out about the solution that your team is developing, because you are the bridge between the client and the technical team. So REST API, what we call it as, the full form is RESTful API. API stands for Application Programming Interface. It is generally used in order to pull data from various applications. Okay, so there are different ways to use this RESTful API, which is generally known as, REST is an acronym for representational state transfer, which is a little technical thing. So API concepts are generally used to pull certain information from a repository, okay, which is residing at a far place. Now let's say my database is in some cloud and I need to pull certain information. So API can help me to collect the information from the database and then get it processed by the RPA bot. Okay, so these technical nuances or jargons you should be very much aware, so that you are also understanding that what is the best fit for solution. Now why I'm talking about this is, so generally what happens is, let's say you are trying to fetch, uh, 50,000 or 50K plus data on a daily basis for to the RPA bot, transactional data. Now, if you do a normal, if you're a developer, or if the solution is to, write a normal query and then fetch the data, this might be time consuming. To fetch 50K data, you might need 30 minutes to 1 hour of time. I'm just putting a hypothetical concept. So now your time frame or processing time is 30 minutes to 1 hour. Now, if you are a good technology person and understand what best fits your solution, you can say, you know what, I'll not go through a query. I will rather go with an API based solution where I can pull multiple or thousands of records much faster. It will not take 30 minutes, probably it will take 10 minutes. See the drastic difference of how effective solutions can be designed. So all these technical nuances and expertise, you should be at least aware at a very high level, not from a design or coding standpoint, but from a conceptual standpoint. Okay, next, what is the third one? Gain knowledge about multiple domain, as automation is not specific to any vertical, horizontal domains and technical specification. So technical specification is nothing but what we have already discussed here, the technology stack. Okay, if one project you are working, the database might be in Oracle. The other project that you have working, the database might be in MySQL, as I was citing. The other project might be they're using MongoDB as a database. See, there are different technology stacks at each project. So you should not be confining yourself with respect to any single technology or platform, because RPA is very flexible as a platform that suits multiple technology stack. It is not that you are only dealing with Java based web application. No, it can be, let's say, a Django based application which is developed using Python. It can be a web service which is developed using Node.js or AngularJS. Okay, so these technology stacks you should be at least aware of. So that's what we mean here, that you need to get, and domain knowledge is very, very important. As what I've rightly explained in the previous slide, the domain or the industry knowledge of insurance, healthcare, manufacturing, e-commerce, transportation, any other electronic gadgets company, product based company, anything, based on your expertise, you need to build that up. Okay, next, define new robots, process post automation of existing. Yes, so you need to create extensive documentation that would define that what does my robot do, what are the ways. So it's a complete documentation, what we call it as SOP, generally standard operating procedure. So this kind of documents get handed over to the client so that they can further go ahead and refer this document and go ahead and use those robots that are being developed. Okay, so you need to be post execution, post automation of any existing process. Your documentation needs to be created. You need to jot down everything in a structural way so that anyone next taking up this work or project should be able to understand what exactly was done or discussed. All right, now let us see what we are trying to achieve, as a part of the different phase wise in an RPA life cycle. Okay, so what we understand is, in an RPA life cycle there are different phases which we have already discussed. In any normal software development life cycle also, you talk about there are multiple phases. The first phase is what we were talking about in opportunity assessment, was prepare RPA, like where your projects or process submission gets done. Then we get into the solution design, where we create the designing and how this solution is going to work. Then we go and build RPA. That means this is my entire development phase where my coder starts coding. Okay, then test RPA is nothing but where I do testing like UAT, which is nothing but user acceptance testing. We give the solution to the client so that they test it with the different test cases and see whether the bot is working as expected. Stabilize RPA is nothing but once your test phases are successful, everything is working as expected, we try to move it to production. That means it is going to get live. That RPA bot is going to go live. Okay, and then continuous improvement is actually what we call it as extended hypercare or support system. Now whenever this we will talk separately. Okay, I'm right now parking this aside, we'll come back to this. Okay, now what happens is, these are my different phases or transitions to which through which my RPA project, or what we call it as RDLC. What does RDLC stand for? RDLC stands for Robot Development Life Cycle. Okay, so what is RDLC? This exactly what is RDLC. Okay, this entire thing defines my RDLC. All right, so whenever we are doing the preparation, now we have already understood the key responsibilities as an RPA, right? Work closely with the teams in identification of business requirements, functional design, process design could be one. Second, analyze the business process, identify the potential automation opportunities, propose a plan for the RPA strategy, right? Then we understood that creation of documents, like what we call it as PDD, we will talk about it in future slides. PDD, process definition or description document. SDD, solution design document, right? This needs to be created. Providing the solution proposal by checking that how much scalability is required, right? And who are your RPA stakeholders? You connect and communicate and engage with them. These are the different roles that we understand. Now how these roles fit in as per our RDLC life cycle, that's what we would be trying to understand. So first of all, when we talk about prepare RPA, that means we are at the very initial, first and foremost stage of understanding the requirements, correct? Or let's say even not even the requirements, I would say, we would say that prepare RPA is the phase where we see, if you see here, inventory of processes. Okay, and opportunity assessment happens where you see business analysts plays a very important role, right? So inventory of processes means, let's say I as a company have identified 10 different projects that I want to automate. That's my inventory. Out of these 10 projects, I am now talking with the RPA business team, or the RPA COE team, of which you are a part of as a business analyst, to understand these 10 projects and do an assessment that how many projects from these are automation potential, what are doable, what are not doable, what is in scope, what is out of scope. So these are the two steps that happens in prepare RPA, where I see business analyst plays a very effective or an important role, right? So first and foremost is the process identification, or let's say the opportunity assessment. Second is solution design. Now let's say out of those 10 projects, we did an opportunity assessment and we identified that, okay, there are 5 projects that we have can take and go ahead. And out of these 5 projects, let's say I prioritize project A1 has to go first, project B1 would be the second, C1 would be the third, D1 would be the fourth, and E1 would be the fifth. Let's say this is the prioritization based on business need. Okay, so now what we will do, we will take A1 project first. Okay, we will take A1 project first and we'll start with the solution design. So we will start going deeper and understand that what exactly is the requirement. With an insightful and inquisitive mind, a BA should always be questioning about the projects or the requirement, and then accordingly we would be designing the solution. Now in solution design, what we see that we need to engage ourselves for PDD creation. PDD creation is nothing but, as I was talking, it is called as process description document or process definition document. Okay, so this PDD is going to have a detailed analysis of the requirement, and we will talk about this. There is a special format that we use. We will talk about it. Right now we'll understand that we need to create a PDD, which is process description document, where my entire process that I'm planning to automate will be documented with screenshots, with valid points. What is my in scope, what is my out of scope, okay, what is my out of scope, everything will be documented. This PDD after completion has to go to the client. The client would review it, that whether all the requirements are captured properly or not, all the stuffs they need are there or not, the solution approach is okay or not. And once the client is okay, they give something called as sign off. Sign off means they give you approval. Okay, go ahead, whatever I have explained you, my problem statement, you have understood it, it has been properly noted, and I further give you approval to go ahead and start working on it. So that's where your business analyst comes into picture. Okay, at times what happens is, when the solution designing happens, parallelly we create test scenarios as well. What are test scenario? If client wants to know any specific activity or attribute of the RPA bot, they will create a test scenario. Let's say the RPA bot needs to log into an web application where you have to enter the password, username, the password, and click on the submit button. Let's say this is the first activity that the bot will do. So I can create different test scenarios when, and this will be not used right now, this will be used when my product is developed and I'm into the testing phase, but the scenarios at times are created before, so that the moment it is ready, we are able to test it. Okay, so let's say after the development, I would see that whether the bot is able to type the username, the bot is able to enter the password, the bot is able to enter, click the submit button and go inside the home page. Okay, if all these activities are being done perfectly, I would say, okay, the first test case is successful. If the bot, let's say, have typed or entered the name, the password, but is not able to click on this submit button, that means this test case has failed. That means there's a bug, the developer needs to fix it. So all these things are also analyzed at the very beginning at times. So that's why you see the business analyst is a part here and the business analyst is a part here, along with something called as QA. So some companies have a separate QA team, quality assurance, who creates these test scenarios. Okay, some companies do not have a separate QA team, they ask the business analyst to go and create the test scenarios. It's up to the organization how much they are willing to spend as a part of their RPA COE. Correct. Next is nothing but build RPA, where my development work starts. So the coders will start the development work. Whether I'm using UiPath, I'm using Automation Anywhere, I'm using Blue Prism, I'm using Microsoft Power Platform, doesn't matter. My development needs to kickstart at this phase. Okay, so in this, where is the BA? There is not much involvement of BA, except if there is any validation change or evaluation impact. Let's say now when I submitted the records as a BA, okay, the client requirement was that you need to log into my website, which is a Java based application. Okay, and this application is live only between, let's say, 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern time. After this server is down. So that means my RPA bot needs to work within this time frame. Now, let's say when you are developing, your client tells you that, you know what, the timing of the server has now changed. Now it is not from 10 to 12. Now it is 2 p.m. Central to 4 p.m. Central. That means it's a requirement change, right? So that means if there are any such changes that get submitted, you need to validate it, revalidate it, and do the confirmation. And that's where during development phase, you as a BA would be working. And evaluation of impact means this change that has come up right now, what is the impact? Is it a drastic change of what initially was given to me, or is it just a minor change? Minor change means, see, just a time frame change of my server, it will not impact my code, right? I just need to change the time in my code that the bot should connect to this server in this time at between this time. So the impact is very minimal here, but there could be changes where the impact is very high. Then it might shrink, or you might need to borrow additional time, or you might need to be, discussing again with your technology team to understand the feasibility. So all these things would eventually matter in your development phase. Now coming back to the test phase. So remember the test scenarios which you created here. I'm sorry, this is not the one. So remember the test scenarios which you created here. These test scenarios will now be utilized here to perform the UAT. So performing UAT, generally business analyst does not do the UAT. Business analyst coordinates the UAT and records the result. So as I showed earlier, the test scenario that my submit button has failed, that's a failure. So business analyst would be capable, accountable to record the test results, that how many test scenarios have failed, how many test scenarios have passed, all these things. So they business analyst will then again, so now you have your stakeholder, you have your developer team, and you have your testing team, which is, let's say, again from the client side, three different teams. Now BA becomes the bridge. So any testing team or process owner team is doing the testing, the bug is reported, BA is accountable to take the charge, document the errors, what are the faults, what are the bugs, report it back to the development team. The development team would eventually work upon it, fix the bug, republish the new code. Then again, the BA should intimate the test team that, this bug has been fixed, go ahead and test it once again. So like this, the bridging is being occupied by the business analyst. So if you see here, business analyst is already involved in coordinating the test and recording the test result, and also prepare sign off for production is the next. Now let's say my user acceptance testing is all clear. Okay, it has, let's say the application has been tested, the bot has been tested for 2 weeks by the client, and after certain fixing of the bugs and everything, they have given you sign off. Now they are ready to take it ahead. So you would be accountable to get the production sign off, or sorry, the UAT sign off from the client, that all the test scenarios that you have given, the current RPA bot is able to execute each and every step perfectly, and there are no bugs, and we are ready to move it to the live production module. So you are accountable to talk to the client or the stakeholder, prepare the sign off documentation, and get the sign off from the client, post which, the development team would start planning the go live. So go live preparation, it is showing here as business analyst, but your technical team should also be involved in it. The planning or the documentation would be done by BA, but the technical implementation work needs to be done by the technical team. Okay. And then measure the expected and the actual output result is also where the BA is. Now, what is this? Now, what happens is after the bot is delivered or deployed into production, okay, still we do a certain assessment of the performance of the bot, that how the bot is performing in the live production. Is the performance of the bot same as it was in UAT or not? So what you do an expected versus actual verification. Now what is expected and actual? Now let's say, one second, Okay, so let me share. So you guys able to see a whiteboard now on the screen?
Yes.
Okay, so what is expected versus actual? Okay, so now let's say this is my expected column. Okay, and this is my actual column. Now generally expected and actual is in terms of performance. Now let's say in expected, I want that the bot should take a minimum, not more than, not more than 10 seconds to log into the application. That's an expected criteria. Now I will also test in production that is the bot actually taking less than 10 seconds or not, or is it taking more than 10 seconds. If more than 10 seconds it is taking, it's a performance degradation. That means we might need to relook into this even though it is in production. Let's say the bot should be able to process 3K plus transactions within 1 hour. This is my expectation. Now I'm checking as a performance analysis that whether this is achieved or not. Now let's say I'm seeing no, the bot is actually doing 2.5K transactions in 1 hour. That means there is an issue of difference of 50K transactions being not processed within 1 hour. Again, there's a performance degradation. Or if I say that I find no, the bot is able to process 3K plus transactions in 1 hour, that means I say the performance is as expected. The actual and the expected does not vary. So whenever there is a difference between the expected and the actual, it is a problematic. We need to reassess or reevaluate that whether there are more business impacts or not. If it is there, we need to do something. Else we are okay. All right. So this is what this is what is this is all about. Okay, so you do an expected versus actual analysis. Now second one, the last one, what I'm gonna talk about is continuous improvement, which is again a part of what I have told you as a continuous improvement is nothing but expected versus actuals analysis, that how the performance of the bot is being monitored. Is the bot expectedly working in the production environment? Are there any bugs that are appearing in the production? Okay, so all these are actually done by the business analyst plus the project manager or any other stakeholder, the performance assessment. It is not only the business analyst. Okay, now if there are any changes, this any changes that needs to be done, business analysts need to work with the development or the implementation or the tech team to see that how these changes can be incorporated so that the bot is now working as expected. Okay, so this is the phase wise involvement of an RPA business analyst to ensure that we are engaged at each and every phase. And whenever one of my project in the RDLC life cycle is at a certain stage, what are the activities I can be at most associated with? All right. Okay, so with this, we will move on to discuss about certain challenges that the RPA's business analyst might face. Now, let's say you have been onboarded by a client where you have taken over a previous RPA business analyst who had managed certain projects, but that business analyst did not do an extensive documentation or documents are missing. So that's a challenge for you, because unless and until you are creating documentation each and every step, when someone takes over this project on your behalf, imagine how would that person understand? Correct. So if you remember in the previous slides, I spoke about that effective documentation is very, very important, and some companies and clients emphasize on crystal clear and concise documentation. This is because they are trying to eradicate this challenge. That if, let's say, you are working for a client now, 3 months you have worked, and now you are not working, you have resigned, and you have now out of the company. So if you have not done an effective documentation, a new person coming in or you joining a firm and filling the shoes of someone else lands from moon or Mars because you do not find documentations properly. It's missing. So imagine the tedious work that you need to do by recreating all the documentations, by re-engaging with all the stakeholders and understand what was done. So that's one of the challenge. Second is, so missing documentation is no documentation at all. If I need 3 PDDs, I have nothing in my hand. Low quality documentation means there is documentation, but that is equivalent to not having a documentation. Right now, let's say in my PDD, I should know what is the in scope of the project and what is the out scope of the project. Now the documents that you have are so poor quality that it was never captured. No sign off was taken from the client on the requirement. Now client has come back and saying, you know what, I did not give you this requirement, what I gave is not there. So what are you going to do? These are the real challenges. So effective documentation, and as I said, that sign off is very, very important, so that the client cannot turn around saying that this is not what I've given you. If the client comes back, so you can show this document and say, hey, this is the authorized person from your team who has reviewed this PDD documentation and has given a sign off that this is what is exactly the requirement that we are trying to develop. Right? So that's why, it acts as a proof. So you need to have a high quality documentation, else it becomes a challenge. Scope creep. Now scope creep means change in scope. Okay, change in scope, which is very, very important to deal with. So typically what happens is the key project stakeholder change the requirements, or sometimes they internally miscommunicate what was described. So eventually this keep creep is also connected to your sign off, scope creep. Why? Because if you do not get a sign off of the requirements and lock it by the client, tomorrow the client will come and say, you know what, the previous stakeholder, what they gave, there is a change and I don't need to do an addition now. I need to do a subtraction instead. That means your code needs to be completely redeveloped because your bot was developed to do addition, but now they're expecting to do subtraction. Correct? So these are certain examples where effective documentation is only the answer. It could be because of poor communication as well between the stakeholders. It can be, the project was so lengthy and complex that nothing was captured. Now client also got, distracted, and they come back and say, this is a scope, this is not the scope. So that's why effective documentation is answer to all this. And then requirements gathering, again, if requirements gathering is not proper, it will lead to scope creep. It will lead to low documentation. So all these are the challenges that you might face if you join, and there are always a simple answer to it. So all firms try to follow, for the functional approach, a proper documentation, so that nothing is missing, nothing is of low quality. Client cannot come back and say this is not what I have given, and you cannot say that this requirement was not captured properly. Right? So these are some real-time challenges. All right, so with this, I'll stop. Bilha, do you have any question before we wrap up the session?
No, I'm okay, Paul.
All right, so let me quickly go back to the slides and explain the assignment 5. So this assignment 5 is telling that do an analytical and functional research to build a roadmap for an RPA COE setup. What is COE? Center of Excellence. Now, let's say you are being hired to a company where RPA is getting started from the scratch, and you are doing the BA role, but you are working with the COE team to create the roadmap, that how you should take projects, what are the criterias of selection. So can you create a roadmap at a very high level, that this is going to be the functional pipeline that we are going to follow? And there, if you can analyze that how BA can contribute for the center of excellence setup, it will be great. So that's the assignment. So if you see here, this is how a pipeline works. This is RDLC, right? So every company will have their own COE to set up their own pipeline. So you can take any generic concept and set up certain roadmap of this RPA module and say that, okay, these are the responsibilities of BA in this phase of the COE or in that phase of the COE, and RPA BA can contribute effectively in these areas. That's the assignment 5. Yeah, makes sense, Bilha?
That's
Okay. All right, perfect. So I think with this, I'll conclude today's session. This was the module 5, and you guys can go ahead and start working on it. Bob will be uploading the slides in some time. I'll share it. Okay, Bob, you can stop the recording.
Okay, question.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
So is this assignment still due on Saturday, or do we submit it by Tuesday then?
No, this assignment you can take a week's time to submit it. Okay.
All right, thank you. Okay.
Yep.
All right.